In 1948, a man was found dead on an Australian beach. No ID, no wallet, no name, just a single, cryptic message. Tamam Shud, it is finished. For over 70 years, this phrase has been the only clue in one of Australia's most enduring and bizarre mysteries. A man without a past, found at the end of the world, leaving behind a puzzle that investigators, cryptographers, and amateur sleuths are still trying to solve today. Who was he? How did he die? And what did he mean by "it is finished"? This is the story of the Somerton Man, a case where every answer only leads to more profound questions. It all began on the morning of December 1st, 1948. On the sands of Somerton Beach in Adelaide, South Australia, passers-by noticed a man propped up against the seawall. He was impeccably dressed in a suit and tie, his shoes polished. He looked so peaceful that many who saw him simply assumed he was sleeping off a long night, or perhaps just enjoying the morning air. One witness even saw him the night before, around 7 p.m., in that very same spot, gesturing as if swatting away mosquitoes. But as the morning wore on and the man remained motionless, it became tragically clear that something was wrong. Police were called to the scene. There were no signs of a struggle, no obvious injuries. He just lay there, a half-smoked cigarette resting on his collar, as if it had fallen from his lips as he passed away. His pockets were empty, save for a few mundane items: a train ticket, a bus ticket, a comb, some chewing gum. Nothing to tell the world who he was. In the eyes of the law, he was a ghost. As investigators dug deeper, the case went from puzzling to downright strange. The first oddity was his clothing. Every single label had been meticulously cut from his suit, his tie, even his underwear. Someone had gone to great lengths to erase any trace of where his clothes came from. A clear and deliberate act to prevent identification. This wasn't just a man with no wallet. This was a man who had been systematically stripped of his identity. Detectives canvassed the country, but no one reported a man matching his description missing. His fingerprints were run through national and international databases, yielding nothing. It was as if he had simply appeared on that beach out of thin air. Adding to the suspicion was the decision to have his body embalmed very quickly, a highly unusual step that preserved the body, but potentially destroyed crucial toxicological evidence for good. It felt less like a standard procedure and more like a premature, irreversible decision. Why the rush? Was it an honest mistake? Or was someone trying to cover their tracks before the investigation could even truly begin? Months went by with no progress. The unidentified man was laid to rest, his headstone simply reading, "Here lies the unknown man who was found at Somerton Beach." The case was growing cold. But then, during a follow-up examination of the man's clothing that had been held in evidence, a detective felt something unusual. Sewn into a tiny, hidden fob pocket inside the man's trousers, a pocket so small it had been missed during the initial search, was a minuscule, tightly rolled scrap of paper. When carefully unfurled, it revealed two printed words: Tamam Shud. The phrase was immediately identified by experts at the local library. It was Persian, meaning, "it is ended" or "it is finished." And it was torn directly from the final page of a very specific collection of poems, the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. This wasn't just a random note. It was a final, dramatic statement torn from a book of poetry famous for its themes of living life to the fullest and accepting the finality of death. The police now had their most significant lead. They just had to find the exact book that this tiny piece of paper came from. The police launched a nationwide appeal, asking the public to check their copies of the Rubaiyat. And unbelievably, it worked. A local man came forward. He told police that shortly after the body was discovered, he found a rare first edition of the book tossed into the back of his unlocked car, which had been parked near Somerton Beach. He hadn't thought much of it at the time, but after seeing the appeal, he checked the book. The last page was torn out. The scrap of paper found on the Somerton Man was a perfect match. The connection was undeniable. But what they found inside the book deepened the mystery even further. On the back cover, faintly written in pencil, were 5 lines of seemingly random capital letters. It looked like a code. Below the code was a phone number. This was a breakthrough. The code was immediately sent to naval intelligence and top cryptographers, but no one could decipher it. It remains unsolved to this day. The phone number, however, was traceable. It belonged to a young nurse who lived just a short walk from Somerton Beach. When police questioned her, she was evasive and appeared distressed by the mere sight of a plaster cast made of the dead man's face. She denied knowing him, but her reaction told a different story, so here we are. A man with no name found dead on a beach, his identity deliberately erased. A secret message. It is finished. Hidden in his pocket, torn from a book of poetry that mysteriously appears in a stranger's car. And inside that book, an unbreakable code and the phone number of a local nurse who claimed to know nothing, yet seemed terrified. The autopsy couldn't even determine a cause of death, though poisoning was suspected, a poison so subtle it left no trace. Who is this man? Was he a spy silenced before he could complete his mission? A jilted lover, ending his life with a final poetic gesture? The nurse eventually admitted to giving a copy of the Rubaiyat to a man named Alfred Boxall, but Boxall was found alive and well with his copy of the book and its final page intact. The mystery only spiraled. The nurse, the code, the unknown poison. These threads promised answers but only tangled the knot further. And just when it seemed the case couldn't get any stranger, the official autopsy report revealed something that baffled everyone, pointing towards theories far beyond a simple suicide or a crime of passion. We'll explore those theories, the attempts to use modern DNA to finally give him a name, and the shocking secrets the nurse took to her grave in Part 2. Thanks for watching, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the conclusion to this incredible story. The autopsy was a dead end. Doctors found no visible injuries, nothing to suggest a struggle or a violent end. His insides told a different story though. There were clear signs of congestion and hemorrhaging, classic indicators of poisoning. But here's the twist. Toxicology reports came back clean. They tested for everything they could think of, but not a single trace of known poison was found. The official cause of death was left frustratingly undetermined. It was as if he had simply stopped. This wasn't a man who died of natural causes, yet there was no proof of foul play. The mystery only deepened. With no physical evidence to go on, theories began to swirl, each more fantastic than the last. The first and most popular was espionage. This was the Cold War era, after all. Was he a spy carrying state secrets? The coded message seemed to fit perfectly. Some speculated he was poisoned with something rare and undetectable, a signature of a Secret Service hit. Another theory leaned towards a secret romance gone wrong. Maybe he was meeting a lover, and the meeting ended in tragedy. Was Tamam Shud a final poetic message from a broken heart? A third, quieter theory suggested suicide. Overwhelmed by personal troubles, perhaps he chose this anonymous beach for his final moments, meticulously erasing every trace of his past life before he went. But none of these theories could explain all the strange details. They were just stories, attempts to fill a void of information. For over 70 years, that's all they were. Stories. But then, in 2022, a breakthrough. A team of researchers, using advanced genetic genealogy techniques on a few strands of his hair, finally found a match. After decades of being a ghost, the Somerton Man had a name, Carl Charles Webb. He was an electrical engineer and instrument maker from Melbourne. The discovery was monumental, a moment of relief that finally gave this man his identity back. But with that relief came a flood of new confusion. Webb was never reported missing by his family. He had a wife, but she had moved to another state, telling her family she was divorced. Why did no one look for him? Why did he travel to Adelaide, and why under such secretive circumstances? Finding his name wasn't the end of the mystery. It was the beginning of a whole new one. So we have a name, but the big questions remain unanswered. Why was Carl Webb in Adelaide? What drove him to meticulously erase every single identifier from his clothes and belongings? And what about the final pieces of the puzzle? What did that torn piece of paper, Tamam Shud, truly mean to him? Was it a clue, a code, or just a piece of poetry he loved? And the most tantalizing question of all, what is the secret hidden in that unbreakable code he left behind in the book? These are the questions that keep the case alive, the voids that his name alone cannot fill. After more than 70 years, the Somerton Man may finally have a name. But his final secret, the reason for his lonely end on that quiet beach, remains buried in silence. What do you think really happened to Carl Webb? Let me know your theories down in the comments. Thanks for watching.